Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great and welcome back to the second part of my April monthly bullet journal setup in the theme of Ukraine. If you haven't seen the first part of this setup, I do recommend watching that maybe first if you want to see what other things I learnt about Ukraine as I did my research and got inspiration for this monthly setup. But in today's video, we are going to be setting up the weeklies part of my month for April. To start, I am just ruling up the pages that I need to work with. I've got 4 weeks in my month that I need to set up, so I'm just making a line across each of the pages and then also marking out where I'm going to be making my Dutch doors. So if you saw last month's weekly setup where I was investigating the Netherlands, I came up with this idea of doing Dutch door weeklies, which I was really happy with how it turned out. I sort of had Amsterdam buildings forming little tabs on each of my weeks, and it worked really well. So I thought I'm going to do that again for Ukraine and obviously just change up the artwork that I was inspired by. So before I got started on drawing everything out, I made sure to divide the right-hand side page into 4 vertical strips so that I could know which one was for which week, if you know what I mean. And then that way it gives me a good basis to work from, and I can draw my plan out and then cut around each of the dividers as well. So I'll explain what I've drawn in just a minute, but I just wanted to let you know that before I get started on the actual painting part and the explanation, because some of you might be wondering why I'm doing it this way. So I just wanted to give you that sort of knowledge in the beginning. And also I really liked doing these Dutch doors mainly because I'm finding that sometimes when you do Dutch doors, you can slice away the binding of where your pages meet. And I was suffering that big time when I was cutting them completely off. So by doing this, I'm actually not touching the spine area of my pages. So it's keeping the book intact, which is definitely what I want in my journal. It actually worries me whenever I cut down the spine. I'm really scared that it's going to fall apart on me. So by doing this, it really helps. Okay, so now you've seen me do my quick sketch. I deliberately skipped through that because I want to be able to explain this from the back to the front. So on this last page of my weeklies, I'm starting out with a drawing of a Ferris wheel. It looks lonely there in this forest landscape, and that is because it is. This Ferris wheel never got a chance to run. Way back in 1970, 100 kilometers north of Kyiv, is a city called Pripyat, founded here to serve the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was a city that grew to have a population of nearly 50,000 people, and then 16 years later, it was about to open its doors to its very own amusement park. 1 week before its scheduled grand opening of the park, though, in April of 1986, which coincidentally is the year I was born, the town needed to evacuate because of the deadliest nuclear disaster of all time that happened nearby in Chernobyl. This Ferris wheel has become an eerie symbol of what happened here so long ago, and unfortunately it's a sad reminder of the lives that were affected. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking this seems like a very sad thing to illustrate in my journal, and it is, but what I loved learning about was what has gone on here since that very disaster. And weirdly, there's just something really cool about abandoned things, especially an amusement park. I just find it really creepily interesting, and I really liked looking at all these abandoned ghost town aspects of it, and this Ferris wheel in particular just really struck my fancy, and it is a symbol of Pripyat and the history there, so I just thought it would make a cool little addition to this scene. So now we're moving forward to the next set of weeklies, which is page 3. And I'm illustrating on this page more of that environment that it's set in, and then the actual nuclear power plant itself. So it's quite like a juxtaposition, having this building very grey and modern and just this smooth arched building, and then have a whole abundance of green surrounding it. It was strangely fun drawing all the little power lines, and the building itself was just, I found really interesting. And so this power station itself is where the explosion occurred, which then made it necessary for so many people to evacuate the towns surrounding this area. A lot of illnesses were breaking out, so people had to escape quickly, and it really did happen very fast. It was in the middle of the night, I read. So yeah, it would have been very scary for the individuals that lived around this area at the time. The Chernobyl exclusion zone covers 2,600 square kilometres or 1,000 square miles and had been left untouched by humans for over 30 years. However, now what is seen in these ghost towns is that nature has prevailed. Without the presence of people around, trees and animals have had the chance to take over. And now where there was once abandoned, barren, ruined city scenes, there's now lush forest peeking up through the buildings and streets, and it's home to so many species now that were once wiped out in these areas. By having no human predators around, they've been able to just survive and grow. One of those animals that people have been researching into in the area is the grey wolves, and these have been sources of inspiration for documentaries and a lot of research that's gone into these wolves and if there's any genetic mutations and how far they travel and things like that. So they've been really watching these grey wolves, and the biggest concern is whether there is any hidden genetic mutations, because from the outside they look, perfectly normal. And so they're wondering if being exposed to this radiation and what will happen when those exposed animals breed with normal species, and if there will be any lasting effects and things. So although it's been great looking at the fact that the nature is prevailing and animals are still existing and building in their numbers, there is still that side order of, what has changed and how will it go from here. So very interesting stuff in my opinion, and I just loved how much it shows that nature finds a way, and even after disaster there is always still hope, and I hope we can remember that right now as well. The other animal I drew here in the background is a deer, and these are present in the exclusion zone along with brown bears, wild boar, heaps of birds, lots of different species of birds and plants that are very rare. And then there's things like black storks and Eurasian lynx, bison. So lots of interesting animals are all evolving from this area. So for this top page of this sort of Chernobyl story scene I've got going on, I thought I would welcome the weeklies as if it is the site itself. So I used the Pripyat entry signage as the weekly's title. And then I included all this lush landscape around it, including a bright bed of their national flower. So now the sunflowers we know are very beautiful to look at, but I didn't know that they possess a bit of a superpower. They have root systems that have evolved into extremely efficient mechanisms for pulling nutrients, water, and minerals out of the ground. Some of those minerals include zinc, copper, and other radioactive elements like those left behind in the soil after a nuclear disaster. So they incredibly suck up all the toxins and store them in their stems and leaves, and they can amazingly handle it. So because of this amazing fact, that is why fields of sunflowers have been planted across the affected area of Chernobyl to help absorb toxic metals and radiation from the soil. They've also done this in the major nuclear disaster sites of Hiroshima and Fukushima. So I just loved learning about these little facts because the sunflower is such a symbol of Ukraine, and it is now, in my eyes, even more meaningful. So that is my little rundown of the Chernobyl lifeline, kind of a layered story of how it began and how it's changed over the years, and just little elements that make you think of the incident itself and how it can be illustrated. So it's definitely terribly sad, but very memorable, and definitely an amazing part of history that shouldn't really be ignored, I don't think. So it's a history for Ukraine, but the world as well, really. I do hope you enjoyed watching me create this scene for Chernobyl, and now that I have finally done the weeklies, I am able to put up the product for this full Ukraine theme on my shop. So if you are wanting to purchase this as a digital download to print out and use for your month, any month of the year in your journal, I will leave the link to the shop product down in the description box where you can go and purchase it. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it interesting like I did, and hopefully you saw the positive side to this story. Thank you again, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.